Okay, everyone, we are live now. Okay, so let's pull up this agenda.
I can put that up on the screen as well, Madam Chair. I have all the tab. Did that tab switch?
Oh, it sure did.
Okay.
Sorry, I was more talking to myself, but if you are
Okay.
ready to have it on the screen, it's totally fine.
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
everything set up in tabs that I should be able to switch to things we need rapidly.
Got it, at your discretion. So while we're waiting, there's on the agenda, everyone will see there's an opportunity for public comment, 2 minutes each. So the way that we do that is we go through with the hand raise function. So let me pull everybody up on the side of my screen, participants.
Are we calling to order now, Madam Chair?
Nope, not yet. Just gonna wait because it looks like, do we have?
We definitely have quorum.
Yeah. Okay, who are we definitely waiting on?
I'm scrolling through. I don't see Mr. Smith.
Right.
Mr. Tunowitz has made it.
Okay, because I also don't see Josh Smith, but I saw him in your notes, so I thought maybe I missed him. Okay, so let me ping him.
Oh, no,
real
the
quick.
notes, just an FYI, those notes are everybody who should be here. And then you see I mark them in red for absence,
Got it.
blue for late arrival. So this is the master list and I work off of that.
Got it. Okay, so I'm just texting Josh right now. And then is there anyone else we're missing that you're aware of? I mean, I've been kind
I
of
don't see
scrolling.
Miguel, but we have Kathy.
Okay.
Miguel will not be
Okay.
joining us.
Okay, so Kathy's filling in.
I
Anyone
see Ms. Eiler. I see Mr. Benner. I don't see Mr. Eklund, but Mr. Tunowitz is here.
Okay.
We have Mr. Watkins. Ms. Gabbard is here. It's just going through the regionals. And at large, Mr. Blankenship. I believe I saw Mr. Elliott. Yes.
Yes, I'm here.
Okay.
Um,
Okay, so
And there's Mr. Nana. I'm just scrolling through. There's Mr. Ford, obviously, Mr. Bowen. We have nearly everyone.
Okay.
The noticeable absence right now is Mr. Smith.
okay, got it. So we're okay, so it's 5:08. So if he joins later, we'll just make a note of that. Sound good to everyone?
Yes, now remind people how to raise their hands again.
Yes. Oh, yes. Back to that. Okay. So go down to the bottom of your screen. There's a little smiley face that says reactions. Click on that. And then there's raise hand. So if you want to talk during public comment, that is the thing to hit. All right. So I'm going to sort of minimize this so I can see. All right. The agenda. Come on, agenda. There we go. Okay. So I'd like to go ahead and call us to order at 8:09 p.m. Pacific time. And on that note, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is attendance.
Okay, I will call the roll, Madam Chair. Obviously, you are here. Mr. Smith is absent. Mr. Hagopian.
Here.
I am here. Mr. Blankenship.
I'm here.
Mr. Bowen.
Here.
Mr. Elliott.
Here.
Mr. Nikayla. That is someone I did not see.
Okay.
Mr. Rufo. I believe that's another absence. Let me go with that. Mr. Benner.
Present.
And Miss Yeviniskich, sorry, I'm getting the name, you know me. Said Mr. Duque would not be here. Mr. Eklund. Mr. Eklund is not here. Ms. Eiler.
Present.
Mr. Ford.
Here.
Ms. Gabbard.
Here.
Mr. Nana.
I'm here.
Mr. Watkins.
Here.
Mr. Clark.
Present.
Mr. Cohen,
Present.
Mr. Dessing, okay, I don't think David Dessing is here. Mr. Hall,
Here.
Mr. Nepomuceno,
Present.
Mr. Pankey,
Here.
Mr. Tunowitz,
Present.
Ms. Yanuskevich,
Present.
and I know Mr. Harris is here, and I believe I saw Richard Brown here earlier. So Madam Chair, and I saw Mr. Eklund come in the room. So let me mark him.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, as present. So Madam Chair, Mr. Smith is absent. The at-larges, Mr. Nicola and Mr. Rufo are absent. The regionals, Mr. Duque is absent, meaning Ms. Yanuskevich will be sitting for him, and out of the alternates, Mr. Dessing is absent.
Okay, thank you very much. And if anyone joins late, we'll try to be mindful of that. Get them connected as quickly as possible. So the next item on the agenda is opportunity for public comment. I see just a couple of hands raised. Who is going to help us keep time?
Martin.
I'll volunteer.
Brian volunteers. Okay, so you'll be helping Mr. Harris. So our executive director, Mr. Harris, whenever he is ready, we will begin. And I believe the first person in line is Ken Molman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hello, LNC members. Welcome to the LNC. I actually just wanted to put in a quick plug for the Bitcoin money bomb that was going on to anyone who's watching to go to donate.lp.org. You can donate with crypto. And if you don't have crypto, you can still donate at lp.org/donate. And that was pretty much the only thing I had to say. I just figured it would be an easy thing to put out here right at the beginning, and I thought I'd do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Molman. I appreciate it. Next up is Mr. Ryan Graham.
Hey, everybody. I just wanted to make a comment. Earlier today, I was listening to the Money Bomb telethon about Bitcoin, and I want to give it kudos for the additional outreach that gives us. I think it's a great idea. One of the things I wanted to comment on was a lot of the comments that came out of that were about the Mises Caucus now being in leadership, and there were a lot of pot shots taken at earlier iterations of the LNC or of the Libertarian Party. And I just want to see some of that stuff die down more. As the LNC and as, you know, chair and vice chair and officers of the party, and as the LNC, you guys represent the Libertarian Party first and foremost, not a caucus. And I would really like to see more of that come out of the messaging. And, you know, like I said, it was good outreach and I was really happy to see it, and I'll probably donate to it here in a little bit. But that was my comment. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Graham. I appreciate that, actually. Okay, those are the only hands raised. Any other opportunity for public comment? Going once, going twice. And we still have 20 minutes on the agenda, but there's no one else who has their hand up for public comment. So,
Madam Chair,
yes.
would it be appropriate to reserve the final 20 minutes for right before we adjourn? We tend to do that in LPCO. We have public comment at the beginning and the end of the meeting if there's excess time. So if it's acceptable to the body, I would move to enter into another period of up to 20 minutes of public comment after we finish our agenda, if there is time before the 2-hour limit.
So
If that's a motion, I'll second.
yeah, I don't have any issue with that at all. Madam Secretary, can you tell us what the threshold for that vote would be, since we're amending the agenda?
Well, it's just splitting the time, but it would still be 2/3 because you technically can't add new items to a special meeting, but this item was already on here. We're just splitting up the time.
Moving it around. Okay. So it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion on that? Going once, going twice, Any objection? Speak now, forever hold your peace. Okay. So that motion passes, and we are going to reserve the remaining, we'll say 16 minutes of public comment towards the end. If anybody else wants to jump in at the end, feel free, use that hand raise function. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is new business with it falls under new business with previous notice. And the first item is motions regarding minutes dated 11/21/21, 12/4-421, 1/17/22, 1/23/22, 4/5/22, 4/15/22, 4/18/22, 5/18/22, and 5/26/22. Now, Madam Secretary, to put you on the spot again, I apologize. Would you mind speaking to this agenda item?
Certainly, there's 4 separate motions, so I'd like to make them 4 separately. They're
Sure.
grouped by similar actions. So the first motion I have is that the changes to the November 21st, 22nd minutes made less than 24 hours after the ballot to approve started, with the changes noted by Ms. Gafford, be ratified as part of the approval made in ballot number 20220609-01. I would like to speak to this because it might not be immediately apparent. Those minutes were approved. A member posted an observation on social media that there was a slight amendment to them after the ballot started and said that was improper. I actually don't believe it is. There was plenty of time for everyone to review or object, but in the interest of keeping the record clean, I'm moving to ratify that small change that was noted by Ms. Gabbard. You're muted, Madam Chair.
Wrong button. Does anyone have any discussion on that? Any feedback for our secretary? Anything at all? Okay. I think it might be in order at this time to hear a motion.
Oh, I made that. That was the motion I made.
Okay, did
I
we?
will second.
There we go. Fantastic. Okay, any further discussion, any objections, any questions at all? Going once, going twice. I'm gonna ask again if there's any objection. Okay, I think it's probably going to be proper for us to do a roll call vote just because we're supposed to do that. So I apologize that it's tedious and takes some time, but let's go ahead and get that going if you don't mind, Madam Secretary.
No, I don't mind at all. Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Januskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
What I missed? I will vote yes. Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Nikela, has he entered? Mr. Rufo, has he entered?
Not that I've seen.
Mr. Smith just arrived, but I don't believe he heard the motion, but it would. Did you wish to vote on this, Mr. Smith?
No, I'll abstain since I didn't hear the motion. Thank you.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Madam Chair, it is 13 yes and 1 abstention.
Okay. Well, then the motion passes.
All right, my next motion is that the amendments to the April 5th, April 15th, and May 18th, 2022 Executive Committee minutes previously prepared by Mr. Wilford and approved by the LNC on April 26, 2022 be approved.
Seconded.
I
Okay.
put my argument on the list, as I had indicated to the LNC, unless there's questions, I don't intend upon just repeating all of
Sure.
the rationales.
Okay,
Ms. Harlos,
Yes,
sorry to interrupt, but you have on your minutes here, you said out loud the meeting on April 26th, but you have May 26th written.
Oh, sorry. I always mess up April and May. I meant it's the pre-convention meeting on April 26th. I mean, May 26th. See, I did it again.
Okay.
okay, any further discussion, questions, edits? Anything at all? Going once, going twice. Okay, so let's go to another roll call vote. If that's all right.
Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
yes,
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
yes,
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
thank you. Mr. Watkins.
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's 14 in favor, 0 no, 0 express abstentions.
Okay, fantastic. Looks like the motion passes.
Okay, my next motion is that the December 4th through 5th, 2021, January 17th, 2022, January 23rd, 2022, and April 18th, 2022 LNC minutes previously prepared by Mr. Welford and approved by the LNC on May 26, 2022, be substituted with the revised minutes prepared by Ms. Harlos.
Seconded.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on this item? Anybody got any questions? You'd catch anything that looked funny? And hopefully everybody reviewed all of this in advance, but you are free to ask if not. Going once, going twice. We're about to go to a vote. Okay, let's go to another vote.
Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
yes,
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
yes,
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Watkins.
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's 14-0-0.
All right, great. So that motion passes.
And I've only got one more, sorry for all this housekeeping. And that is that the May 26, 2022 draft LNC minutes jointly prepared by Ms. Harlos and Mr. Wilford be approved.
Seconded.
Great. Okay, any discussion or questions about this item? Let's do it.
Okay, I'll call do the vote, Madam Chair.
Sorry, no, just trying to make small
Okay.
talk to prompt anyone to say anything. But it's actually good. I think that everybody's already reviewed everything and on board. So if there's no objections, we are gonna go to a vote.
Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
yes,
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
yes,
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's 14-0-0.
Fantastic. The motion passes. All right, so that takes care of minutes. Thank you, everyone. We got through that pretty quickly. Is that everything?
That's everything for my minutes motions.
Okay.
Stop barking, doggy. I'm sorry. I've got a hungry
That's
Dotson.
okay.
And it's funny, I'm eating a hot dog, so the hot dog wants a hot dog.
There you go. Okay, so if that takes care of everything with minutes, then the next item on our agenda is discussion assistant treasurer. This was put on the agenda by Ms. Harlow. We're obviously going to want to hear from our treasurer as well.
Okay, and I can let you know the reason I put it on there. We appointed a temporary assistant treasurer because an appointment was required at our post-convention meeting. But we have to decide whether we're going to make the temporary permanent or go through an application process to appoint the permanent treasurer. I didn't notice I didn't put on here any kind of motion. We can informally decide to go through applications since that's the default.
Sure.
And I believe that's what Mr. Hagopian wants. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page, that we were going to solicit applications and maybe appoint the permanent one at the July meeting.
Okay, so let's hear from Mr. Hagopian, and then if he'd like to say anything, I think we might also want to hear from Mr. Elliott.
Yep, thank you. I did solicit applications. So far, we have 3 non-LNC resumes in. I expect to get 2 more non-LNC resumes in. We also have 2 LNC members who have expressed interest and 1 more LNC member who is possibly expressing interest. So I believe that's 8 total who have expressed some form of interest. So I think application process and a vote is probably the way I would like to proceed.
Okay. And do you want to do that maybe at the in-person meeting, or do you want to do that in an email ballot? Like what's?
Yeah, Karen Ann and I discussed this, and if OPA vote is allowed, I think that is a fair way of doing it. I can post the resumes and or candidate statements for like a week and then do OPA vote.
Okay, so I'm totally fine with that. Do you want to chat offline about how quickly we get that up? How much time? Do you have an estimate of how much time?
Yeah, I mean, I know exactly who the 8 are. So what I can say is resumes and or statements due by Friday, and then the vote can go right then and last a week or something.
Okay, so I'm comfortable with that. Ms. Harless, would that work for you?
Yes, I just asked Mr. Hagopian, just to keep things consistent, if you could forward to me the applications. I put them in a little like applicant's notebook because it's kept in a certain format for future reference, and I can distribute those privately to the rest of the LNC. We normally don't post applications publicly because they have personally identifiable information. What we do post publicly is an index of the names of the people who applied.
100% okay with that.
Okay, does anybody else have anything to weigh in on this item? Doesn't look like we're going to come to a vote tonight. Anybody at all? All right. Well, I think that takes care of that agenda item, and we'll probably move to the next item if that's okay with everyone. Okay, so the next agenda item is amend the NDA, and this was placed on the agenda by Mr. Blankenship. That's what I've got.
Yeah, on behalf of Mr. Cowan.
Got it.
I was going to say I will defer to Mr. Cowan.
Okay, fantastic. So why don't we hear from Mr. Cowan? Make sure you're unmuted.
Hello, everyone. I'm Martin Cowan, as you may know. I happen to be a lawyer. I have written pretty extensively on the email list about this and didn't anticipate, in fact, denied that I would be talking about this tonight, having put up several posts about it. But the gist of my problem is that as I read the current NDA, it keeps everything is secret except that which is public. I frankly think it's a very poorly drafted document. In my most recent email, which I put out, I think yesterday, I listed 4, to me, obvious defenses to it. One, it's what's called a contract of adhesion. And what that means, that's the type of contract that you get on the internet all the time, where, you click on, I don't know, AT&T, and they say, before you go forward, you have to sign this contract, and we don't ever read it. And the irony here is that while this is a contract of adhesion, we, members of the LNC, happen to be on both sides of the contract. In other words, we're the individual signer, but as a board, we're the person who is who's putting the contract on the members. I don't have any problem with keeping things secret, but I think we ought to know that which we are going to be keeping secret. In my email of yesterday, I mentioned the only single thing that they talk about that they want to be secret was, I can't even remember what it was called, some kind of list for, they named something specific. The only things that I am aware of that should be secret are the customer database, which I totally agree that ought to be secret. And if we have a secret meeting, executive session, I think that ought to be secret. But that's the only thing, those are the only 3 things that I know that ought to be kept secret. And the breadth of this document is breathtaking and inappropriate. So I very much would like for a very simple change, and that is that the person, the LNC, when we distribute secret information, that we let the individual member who's the receiver of that secret information know that, yes, this is secret information and it's intended to be covered by the non-disclosure agreement. So simply says, let the people know when you're disclosing something secret that it ought to be secret. Now, it's obvious, I think, that the customer relations software ought to be secret and the secret meetings ought to be secret. So I'm not worried about those things. But if there's something else which is secret, I think we need to be told before we're bound by this contract. I did mention a couple of other defenses that come to my mind. That was the rule against perpetuities, which it's a contract that says it lasts forever. And I don't know whether it applies to this particular contract, but it's a general rule that says you can't have things that last forever. You can't have a contract that has an element or restriction that lasts forever. I thought it was a problem that the contract didn't specify what jurisdiction it's going to be enforced in. Obviously, Virginia is an option. Georgia's an option if it's me, because I live in Georgia. But I think the contract, this is not really relevant to what I'm asking tonight, but it ought to say, we're going to look to Virginia law to enforce this contract. What else? Void for vagueness, as I mentioned, I think it's extremely vague, and it's not putting it on notice of what we're going to be required to do. But bottom line, the simple thing I'm asking, the only thing I'm asking is that the LNC let the recipient know, that is the members of the LNC, what it is precisely that we're required to keep secret when it's passed on to us. They say, oh, so if I get something in the email, somebody says, okay, Martin, you're going to get this secret document, please keep it secret, it's covered by your NDA. So that's all I'm asking, is that this LNC make it clear that the sender of the information let the recipient know that this is intended to be covered by the non-disclosure agreement. I've talked enough, so I'll stop talking. Thank you.
Okay, I've actually got a lot to say on this. I see there's hands raised. I'm just not able to do the hand raise function. So I'm going to make some points and then we're going to go down the line. We've got Karen Ann Harlos, Dustin Nana, Kathy, Dave Benner. So let me raise a couple of points. All confidential information should be clearly marked as such before it is communicated to the recipient. I don't have any issue with this. I think it's a good idea to communicate what's confidential. So I'll want to hear pushback on that from anyone else. It says, furthermore, all previously signed NDAs shall be deemed to include this language. So a concern I have is I'm not sure how this works from a legal perspective, how we can change a contract that someone already signed retroactively. I'd be very careful about calling any past contracts void. We have a situation where in a handful of state parties, data has been leaked, and there might have also been a leak from the national party. I don't know. This is all very speculative, but the truth remains that data has been leaked. It could have come from states. It could have come from a former staffer. It could have come from former LNC members. I would like to be able to, reserve my rights in the event that we figure out what happened if we had to go there with litigation, which is definitely not at all my the first weapon that I would use to choose to battle that, to have that battle. But it is an option, it's a nuclear option. How do we reconcile that with concerns over a perpetual NDA? Well, this is definitely an issue that's been raised, and I know that we probably have some staff who are also concerned with it as well. Once someone works for the party, they have a lot of access to a lot of our data, and they sign an NDA. If we just say that it's void as soon as they find employment elsewhere or they leave, I'm a little bit concerned about our security, because obviously people download lists. There's no way to keep someone from downloading a spreadsheet. I can't, beam myself into their computer and delete it. So to a certain extent, there is an honor system. And again, it's sort of like we reserve our rights to be able to sue if we absolutely had to go there. Now, we should pick a venue for disputes to be litigated in. I totally agree. I don't know offhand if Virginia is the best place for that. It could be good. I would want to look into the finer points. I've never litigated a case in Virginia. Severability wasn't mentioned, but we should probably put something about that in our NDA if we choose to amend it. And that's all I got. I just wanted to run through that really quickly. So let me jump over to Ms. Harless.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would have brought up a lot of what you did as well, though I would just say, I thank Mr. Cowan for making me look up the rule against perpetuities, which I haven't looked up in over 25 years, but I don't think it applies here, but it's a very interesting concept for anyone to look it up. But I understand the spirit of this motion, but I think it would have to be heavily amended before it would be acceptable. So I'm going to propose one such amendment. I don't know if I'd still vote for the underlying motion, but this would certainly make it more reasonable, I think, is striking that last sentence. We can't retroactively change the NDA. I mean, that's just, we don't have a time machine, and I just don't think that's reasonable and could open the party to a lot of potential liability. So I move to amend by striking the last sentence.
Second.
Can we take, actually, I'm like getting my face all close to the screen because I can't see it perfectly. There we go. Okay, so let's take.
Madam Chair, I just, and Madam Secretary, I just want to make sure that we're clear. I didn't hear that this motion was actually before the body yet, that it was moved. Was it moved?
Maybe not. I thought Mr. Blankenship moved it, but there wasn't a second.
I don't honestly recall hearing a second.
If I can second it, I will second it now.
Okay, so let's go back in time in our Ronar time machine. Mr. Blankenship, did you move for this?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. And so we've got a second. And so now, Ms. Harless, if you don't mind, can you repeat your motion so that we do it all in the right order?
Sure. And there was a second to my motion. I can't remember. I believe it was Mr. Nana. I moved to strike the last sentence, and the last sentence reads, furthermore, all previously signed NDA shall be deemed to include this language.
Yeah, and I seconded.
Okay, great. So the motion now reads that all new signers of the non-disclosure agreement be permitted to handwrite in the following term of the contract. All confidential information shall be clearly marked as such before it is communicated to the recipient. Okay. Okay. Ms. Harless, would you like to speak any more to this before we jump over to Mr. Nana?
Oh, no, I think it's pretty self-evident.
Okay, great. Mr. Nana, would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I really don't have much to add other than that. I think it's pretty clear that we can't do this last piece that I just seconded, removing. This would, in my mind, allow former staff and LNC members carte blanche to do whatever they want with the data because we can't go back in time and mark things confidential that they've been given previously.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Yanuskavich, would you like to weigh in?
Well, what I was going to say has already been covered, but I do have a point of information, if I could ask. A week or so ago, there was some question on the list whether this was the current NDA that was approved last May, I believe, by the LNC, if there is one NDA, if there's two NDAs, and I was wondering if we have any clarification on that.
Okay, that's a really good question.
I know that answer, Madam Chair, if you'd like.
Please go ahead.
Mr. Molman had researched back through the motions of that he had a memory of. The NDA that was approved by the LNC was for the CRM only. This is not the CRM NDA. This is a more blanket NDA. So there are two NDAs out there.
Okay, good to know. So everything that we're discussing right now, to be clear, that's not for the CRM NDA. Is that my understanding, or is that everyone else's understanding, or is this for every NDA?
The motion would need to make it clear.
This is Martin again. I actually posted, this, I think today, the document we're talking about.
Okay.
And it's not the CRM. This document I posted doesn't even mention the CRM.
Okay.
So I'm talking only about the one that I was emailed, in which I emailed back today in the list.
Okay, that's my understanding as well. I wanted to hear from you on the record and also make sure that everybody else had the same understanding. Okay, let's go to Mr. Benner.
Yeah, so there's been some really good dialect about this issue in general, but my question is, if we've confirmed there is in fact two different variants or flavors of the CRM, can anyone speak to whether this is the one that our current staffers have signed on to, the one that we're talking about adding this proviso to?
The NDA, I think that's probably a question for our executive director, Mr. Harris, if he doesn't mind weighing in.
Yeah, so the two versions of the NDA, the CRM NDA is not the one that was signed. My understanding is the one that has been sent to the committee, as Ms. Harlos indicated, is what we sometimes colloquially refer to as our volunteer NDA. This is the NDA that is signed on to by anybody that we are giving volunteer access to data or internal information on. I do believe it is similar, but likely not identical to the language that staff is held to directly in our employment contracts when we are direct staff. We don't actually sign an NDA. We are under a much more robust employment agreement, as I'm sure you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, thank you. And if it's all right, we will go to Mr. Pantke. Are you good, Dave?
Actually, I mean, what I interpreted Tyler's words to mean is that staff actually didn't sign this NDA. So to me, it kind of abnegates the question that staffers would be able to divulge information if we can't apply this retroactively. That's just what I took. If I'm mistaken, please clarify.
That makes sense. What about contractors? I'm actually not sure what contractors sign.
If I may answer, so contractors likely also have provisions stipulated in their contract. So really the folks covered under the retroactive language, which I am concerned with if we were to do it, but those would be volunteers, the former LNC, or I should say any former LNC from previous terms. I think those would be the broad categories that would be under it. Would be anybody who's done volunteer work for the party that is involved having access to that information and prior LNCs. There may be some other category of persons that receives that exact version of the document that I'm just not calling to mind right now, but those would be the two big categories.
Okay.
I'm good now. Thank you.
Okay, great. So I feel like on that note, I feel like Ms. Harlos and Mr. Nana's amendment takes care of any concerns about retroactivity, and the language in the motion says all new signers. So I feel like comfortable that we're not trying to change anything in the past. We're not going backwards and undoing anything. Mr. Pankey, sorry to keep you waiting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In general, the amendment, I totally am fine with the amendment. To the original motion, I actually do not agree with the original motion, primarily because in organizations, any company or whatnot, there is incidental sharing of information where you may not remember when you're hitting a reply button to also place a tagline saying that a piece of information that you're sharing is confidential. And in most organizations, unless you explicitly deem something to be public release information, all information inside of the organization is confidential to that organization. And
I have
so,
a point of order, Madam Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
We're only supposed to be debating the amendment at this portion. Things get really crazy if we start debating the underlying motion. I request that we stick to the amendment before we get to the underlying motion.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair.
then
I'm
I would
sorry,
like to be
Donovan.
recognized after the amendment's disposed of. Thank you.
Okay, can you raise your hand again, just to make sure that I keep that up?
I sure can.
Okay, great, thanks. Okay, Mr. Cohen, did you have discussion on the amendment or the main motion?
Yeah, I didn't make the motion because I'm an alternate, but I have no objection to that, to the motion to amend.
Okay, great.
So, and, if there's no objection, there's no objection from me.
Okay, great. All right. So if there's no more discussion on the amendment, we should go to a vote and then go to the main motion. Is that all right with everyone? Okay. Madam Secretary, if you don't mind, let's get a roll call vote going.
Okay, one moment. I will need to just duplicate this 1 second.
Yeah, take your time.
All right, so this is just to get rid of this. I want to make sure it's clear in the record here. This was moved by me. Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes, indeed.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana.
Yes.
I don't think Mr. Nicaila or Mr. Roofer are here. I'm just calling them out just in case. Mr. Smith,
Yes.
Mr. Watkins,
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's 14 to 0.
Okay, great. And the motion, the amendment passes. So let's go to discussion on the main motion. I'm going to say one thing and then we're going to hear from Donovan Pankey. So the only concern I have is how do we delineate that information as confidential? Obviously, you can put the word confidential in it. Does it have to be at the top of the email or the whatever? Can it be in the body of something? Can we use different language? Please don't circulate. If something is deemed confidential in a policy manual or a contract or an internal memo, does that count as well? Anybody have any thoughts on that? I'd like to hear from maybe Martin or Ms. Harlos or Dustin Nano or even our executive director.
This is Martin. I think you may be asking for, a specification of clearly. I can't see what I said. Is it a clearly identified? Did I use that adjective?
It says all confidential information shall be clearly marked as such.
Yeah, I mean, that's clear. It's clear enough to me. I mean, obviously, if you put it at the top, it's clear. If you, if it's people,
right,
that you can put it at the first phrase of the email. You can put it in the heading of the email. You can put it on the document itself. This is top secret. There's a whole lot of ways to be clearly, and I think it's probably, not ideal trying to try to guess what they all might be.
Okay. I mean, I think it's pretty clear to me, but there are so many situations where you encounter someone who's just really eager to wordsmith something. And I just want to make sure that we're covered in that situation. Like if there's something that's marked, somewhere else internally, like, and we, that it's clearly confidential, and then we send it in an email and we fail to put confidential in the email, I want to make sure that it's still protected. I hope that makes sense to everyone. Okay, so let's hop over to Mr. Pankey.
Thank you. So to continue on listening about incidental, and this kind of dovetails along with your concerns, Madam Chair, is that without us having a default notion of is information confidential or is it non-confidential, there are certain areas that we explicitly describe as a place where you're communicating things publicly. But for example, the public list, or if it's published on LPedia, or another one of those known public forums. However, we have lots of forums that we will be engaged in that are not necessary, that don't have a known public classification. And, the CRM, because we handle the CRM separately, obviously that covers a separate NDA, but standard communication within the organization. For example, if I'm sharing something via Gmail or a simple email in between two different members that's going on, or if you're dealing with other systems, there's the notion of a default case. And the key is, how do you treat the default case? In most organizations, the default case is that this is confidential, and unless you explicitly desired for it to be public information. In this case, what we're actually doing is we're having the default be that it is public information, or it's disclosable, at least it's disclosable information, and that you have to decide that that's confidential. And that will place us this will place us in the position where, if you're operating in a default mode, that we will leak, we will be in a position to leak information versus having an inadvertent disclosure of information, which is something that we can action. If our default position is that the information is disclosable or it's public information, then we have no action to take on it. You can't retroactively say, well, this was confidential, but I can't mark it because everything that's run through, we say that you have to actually clearly mark it. It's helpful to mark that information, but it just makes it such that we can have more information leak out than we would otherwise desire in the default case where somebody forgets to put something in their tagline. At that point, the damage is done and we can't go back. And that's the reason why most organizations list all information as confidential and subject to non-disclosure unless it's intentionally, made disclosable.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I think that that's a reasonable thing for us to consider. So I'm going to go down the list, starting with Mr. Bowen, down to Mr. Hagopian, and then we're going to go to Mr. Harris. But Ms. Harless, should I get you in there somewhere? I wasn't sure if I missed you.
Yes, now that we're back on the main motion, but I'd also know, Madam Chair, that we're out of time, that without an extension of time, we're on voting if we're not, don't have an extension of time.
So I would entertain a motion to extend time if somebody wants to make it.
So moved.
For how long?
Another 10 minutes.
Got it.
Second.
Okay, who was that second from?
Mr. Bowen.
Okay, great. Okay, any objections to extending time for an additional 10 minutes? We've got quite a few hands raised. It's pretty important. Going once, going twice. Okay, time is extended. So okay, Ms. Harless, I'm so sorry. At what point did you have your hand raised? Because I don't want to just.
Mr. Bowen and Mr. Elliott were ahead of me for sure.
Okay, so let's jump to Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just have a point of inquiry, a little clarification, and I may have missed a couple emails. I apologize if I've got the situation confused, but I'm just wondering what the effect this has on those of us that were prior LNC members. I'm not sure whether, do we not get to write that on our NDA, or was that already included in a prior NDA? I'm not sure how that affects prior LNC members like me. If someone could explain that.
That's a really good question, and I don't know the answer. Martin, do you want to chime in, or Mr. Harris?
This is Martin. I think because we removed the language from the motion about retroactively applying it, I think this language only would apply to new signers of this new document. So whatever somebody else signed before this document would not be writing in, you must tell me what's a secret before you send it to me. So you would be bound, it seems to me, by whatever it was that you signed. I do note that this document has a tagline date of creation of January 2022. So you may not have signed this document.
Okay, so my perspective on this is that we're probably going to need to send a new NDA to everyone. But that's potentially part of a different discussion. Does that kind of answer your question, Mr. Bowen?
It does. For now, I was getting to the same conclusion as you, Madam Chair, that that would probably be the solution.
Okay, got it.
Unless again, someone else has another tact on that, but that's the way I see it too. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, so let's go to Mr. Elliott.
So I dealt in the world of confidential, market-sensitive information for 35 years in the private sector. We were trained on what the implications were of becoming aware of confidential information about a third party, and what our obligations and all were, and how to handle that. The important part for us is, I think we need to determine as a group, like we're a public organization. We're not a private entity. We're not a for-profit. We don't have business plans and that sort of thing. That if our competitors saw, they could preempt us, that sort of thing. I think we need to have a more general discussion about, identifying what is the information that, if it got in the public, would put us at any risk. Obviously, financial information, obviously, strategic information, candidate or race tactics, that sort of stuff. But I think that I guess my default idea is we want to be as public as we can, but we also have to protect the organization. So I think a broader discussion, or possibly putting together a small task force with people who have legal backgrounds might be, and have a more global approach at this, and say, okay, let's figure out what information we generate on a regular basis and determine what needs to be protected, and sort of, go from that, rather than the private sector tack, which is everything's private unless we explicitly make it public.
Okay. Good points. We are burning through our time, so I'm going to jump to Ms. Harless. I want to make sure we get to Mr. Hagopian because he hasn't spoken on this yet.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just know, and I'll make it at the end of what I'm going to say. I intended on moving to postpone this to email list, but I don't mind making it to a motion to postpone after Mr. Hagopian speaks. Okay, I have some really strong objections here to some things that were said. Our culture and our party has a presumption of transparency. That is a non-negotiable. And let me say, this isn't just my opinion. This is per our bylaws. Just because we aren't officially in a meeting, our bylaws give a scope of things that can be kept secret. If it doesn't fall within that scope, it's not secret, no matter what anyone's personal opinion here may be. And I believe the spirit, at least, of that bylaw is that includes even emails and things like that, because we're allowed to have email votes, and it's all considered to be covered in our bylaws, and it's open and transparent on the list. So there is no presumption of secrecy. There is a presumption of transparency. And that is what the language of this motion says. And that's the part I actually like about this motion. But there's still some issues and why I'm going to want to postpone this. This should only be for new LNC signers. The presumption of transparency only applies to LNC. It does get flipped when it comes to volunteers. Volunteers don't own this information. They're not elected. There is a presumption of secrecy when it comes to volunteers. There is not a presumption of secrecy when it comes to LNC. So I'd make that LNC signers to make it absolutely clear. And I think there's certain categories we need to list out that never need to be marked confidential, that everyone just knows they are, like personally identifiable information of non-LNC members, political strategy, or anything that would fall under executive session. It would be rather tedious for us to have to mark each of that confidential when our bylaws already say it's confidential. Lastly, on the presumption of secrecy, that's just ripe for things we've seen. And I'm not just talking about the past LNC, I'm talking about political organizations in general. When you have this presumption of secrecy, everyone can flout it until there's someone you want to mark for censure or suspension. And then all of a sudden, everyone's invoking this NDA. I do not want to see this become a weapon. So now, with that being said, I am moving to postpone this for further workshopping on the LNC email list after we hear from Mr. Hagopian.
Second.
Okay.
I was going to say the same thing, so that's fine.
Okay, that's fine. Let's go to Mr. Benner and then Mr. Harris.
Yeah, I'm in support of this motion. I have the same concerns that Martin had. I think that it is impossible to adjudicate whether violations of the divulging improperly of this kind of information take place without it. I agree with Karen Ann that there's a presumption of transparency in terms of things that are open business with open votes. The exceptions being if there's executive committee, that would be presumed to be kept secret. There's one other thing I wanted to say too, is that it's not clear to me that this doesn't cover off for situations in which, well, hey, the confidential tag isn't there. It seems to me that it would allow us to send a secondary email that say, hey, this was missed, but this is confidential. It doesn't seem to me like it makes that the case for all time. So I support it.
Okay, great. Let's hear from our executive director, Mr. Harris.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate some of the comments that the committee has been made, and I'll limit myself because it seems that maybe this is headed for some further workshopping. You know, one of my concerns whenever there's a change like this that's going to place the onus on the communicator of information, in a great many circumstances, that communicator of information is going to be a member of staff. And so something that's just like a know it when you see it sort of smell test of, if you think it needs to be labeled confidential, then label it confidential, is a looser directive than I would be comfortable giving to members of staff. I'd want to have clearly defined guidelines on what we should be marking and what we shouldn't be marking. I would want to make sure that something that doesn't get marked by oversight doesn't get then just rush released in some way. You know, we as staff members, those of us who work for the Libertarian National Committee Incorporated, as it says right at the top of our paychecks, do adopt a culture of professionalism and do adopt a presumption that internal communications are going to remain internal between and amongst members of staff, and pulling the LNC into that circle is something that I don't want to see this have a chilling effect on. As Mr. Molman mentioned down in the chat comments, I mean, is it as simple as we all add confidential to our signature lines and maybe that covers our internal staff communications? But then again, I also don't want to do something that is defeating the intent of the committee. So it sounds like this is headed to workshopping. I would ask you all to keep front of mind as you do that, the impact that implementing compliance is going to have on staffers. And of course, you know, the fiduciary duty that we all have, whether we're members of staff or the LNC, to this organization be able to function smoothly without having to move through a lot of onerous hoops.
Thank you. We are almost out of time. Let's move to Mr. Blankenship.
I just wanted to very briefly note that we should probably, as we're moving this workshop online, consider the timeliness and expediency with which we should consider this, as of right now, none of us have signed an NDA. That's something we should be thinking about. We need to do this. It's just we want to get it right.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Nana, I missed you. I apologize. Oh, no, wait, your hand is down.
No, it's fine. Yeah.
Okay, so has time on this agenda item expired?
Well, Madam Chair, there's a pending motion to postpone.
Yes. So if discussion is done, then we're going to go to a vote on that.
Point of inquiry, the motion is to postpone any votes on this motion, correct? Or
Yes,
on this proposal?
Yes, Mr. Elliott, after further workshopping and discussion on the LNC list.
I second.
Okay, I think it was, okay, so it was moved and seconded already. So are we going straight to a vote? How are we on time?
I think we're out of time, Madam Chair.
Okay. Okay, so let's go straight into a roll call vote. And I'm looking for the text of the motion.
It is Harlow's move to postpone to email list for further workshopping.
Got it. Okay, at your convenience, we'll do a roll call vote.
Second, let me copy over the motion. Why did it do that? Okay, I see now, never mind. Let me just zero these out because I copied one that was already populated. Didn't mean to do that. Mr. Benner,
I'll pass.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskevich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott,
Yes.
Mr. Ford,
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard,
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian.
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana,
Yes.
Mr. Smith, I will come back to Mr. Smith. Mr. Watkins,
Yes.
Mr. Benner,
I vote yes.
Mr. Smith. I saw in chat that he was his kids were acting up. So Madam Chair, I believe he is absent for right now.
Right.
So it's 13-0-0.
Okay, great. The motion passes.
Madam Secretary, Michaela is on the call. I do apologize for being late. I did have an LPF meeting. Shouldn't be a problem next month, hopefully. Just was out early.
Do you wish to record a vote, Mr. Nikela?
No, thank you, Madam.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so that motion passes. And is that going to be reflected as an abstention for Mr. Nikela, or just that he was not present for the vote?
I believe he was present, so I marked him down as an abstention
Got
unless
it.
he objects and wants to be recorded a different way.
Got it. Okay, that works for me. Okay, so I believe that concludes that agenda item. And the next item on our agenda is a ballot access update. So that was placed on the agenda by Ms. Harlos.
It was requested by, and I believe Mr. Pankey, it was requested by an alternate, and I said I would put it on the agenda. And it's
Okay.
discussion only.
Got it. So I'm happy to hear from that alternate. We can also hear directly from Dustin Nana, who is on the ballot access committee.
Yes, I was the one making the request, Madam Chair, and I would love to hear from Mr. Nana at this time.
Okay, Mr. Nana, take it away.
All right, let me pull up my notes. All right, here they are. So the ballot access committee had several vacancies up until the middle of this past week. The chair appointed Mr. Molman and Miss Gilson, the aforementioned from Kentucky and the latter mentioned from Ohio, to fill a couple of those vacancies until the end of our term, which is the first in-person meeting after the upcoming elections in November. So that should be first quarter next year. That being said, we haven't had a chance to meet yet because we only had 3 total members previous to that. So now we're up to 5. I think there might be 1 or 2 vacancies left on the committee. One actually might be something that the LNC has to vote on. But getting more to the point of the actual ballot access state of the party, I called Mr. Redpath and we had a discussion about Illinois. Illinois' turn-in is July 11th. He is cautiously optimistic that they will succeed. The total signatures that they have collected thus far is a little under what they wanted or expected, but he doesn't think it's a catastrophic situation by any means. It's just going to be tighter than they would have wanted when they turn in at the end. The volunteer effort has been lacking, and people are not quite living up to the pledges they made signature-wise. That's not unusual for a drive. This happens almost every time. People overpromise and then underperform. Obviously, these people are all volunteers, so their time. We're on their time with this. As far as the people that they're paying out there, they're producing good work. A couple of the people got in a little later than was expected, but like I said, nothing catastrophic. They're still on a path to succeed. Conversely, Mr. Redpath has collected more signatures than he expected to be able to. I want to say he's told me he collected like 7,500. So he's doing great. That's what I've got out of Illinois so far. So they're still chugging along. Like I said, July 11th is their turn in. I think they're going to collect all of the signatures together in one location end of next week. And then they have to separate them out and submit them to entities at that time. Moving on to New Hampshire, their turn in is August 10th. I talked to their state chair, Mr. Pelletier. In Congressional District 1, they are over by nearly 1,000 signatures raw. They need 1,500 valid, so that means they have around 2,500 total signatures right now. They're feeling pretty comfortable there. In the 2nd Congressional District, they are not quite to the minimum, so they don't have quite 1,500 there. They're aiming to be about 1,000 over in that congressional district as well, and they're going to be able to focus most of their efforts there since they're pretty much done in Congressional District 1. They are feeling extremely comfortable that they will get plenty of signatures in plenty enough time, and they're going to go above and beyond and get as many signatures as possible. They have gotten permission to collect signatures at a local grocery chain called Market Basket, which those of you who are experienced in petitioning know is a gold mine. Being able to petition at retail locations is not something that every state or individual business allows. And when you're able to, you net a lot of signatures from that. They have not expended any of the funds given to them from the LNC, so they still have the full $5,000 to use in Congressional District 2. So like I said, they're feeling very comfortable, and there should be no reason that they don't succeed as well. And that's all I got right now. Those are the only 2 states that we are petitioning in currently.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Nana?
Yes, Mr. Nana, are we doing any of the funding of the Illinois drive, or is that all being internally funded at this point?
We expended, we gave them 30,000, and without going back to, we did this in the previous electronic meeting, without going back. I know it was split into 2 $15,000 intervals. I don't remember exactly what the trigger was to get the second 15,000, but the first 15, I believe, was already paid out or should have already been paid out to them.
Okay, so we've sent the 15, but we don't know whether or not they've retrieved they've qualified for the second 15?
That's correct, and I believe they're going to. I mean, it's pretty much a
I can answer that, Mr. Nana. Because
Go
it was my motion. It was the second payment, I believe, was at 115% of their minimum total, which they, I don't believe, have gotten to yet.
Not yet. No, they are not quite there yet.
Right.
You know,
Okay.
I would imagine that they're going to get that payout, but you know, I would hope so. If not, that would be a bad sign for the success of the drive.
Okay. So-
LNC, the prior motion is on the screen.
Okay. So let's go to Mr. Ford. He has his hand raised.
Very briefly, I'd like to point out and congratulate the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire. They were an active force at the past week's Pork Fest Festival petitioning. Anyone familiar with New Hampshire politics, that represents a sea change in liberty movement. When you bring together the small L's of the Pork Fest movement, together with the big L's of the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire, it was a great moment for the Libertarian movement in Northern New England. Thank you.
Pat, real quick, the candidates that this is helping are who? Who is New Hampshire backing?
Well, you've got, that's always, of course, an interesting question, given what's going on in New Hampshire. But both the Senate and the gubernatorial race are at stake here. And those are ballot access elections. So, I mean, it's, bear with me, Jerry Lee Kaufman, of course, is running the United States Senate. Carolyn Marzicka, she's running as governor. Both of them have been active forces, both at PorcFest and in the small L movement, and both of them have been actively engaged in petitioning. I want to point out that a variety of folks have come together in New Hampshire, and as you can tell, they take their ground game very seriously there.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Nana about ballot access?
Mr. Nana, I had one more if there's nobody else available. Prior to convention, there was an open item for New York and New York's ballot access. Do we have any update on that?
Yeah, information from New York has been harder to come by. I don't believe, I believe their signature filing deadline is already passed, and I do not believe they succeeded.
I can fill in on that if you'd like. I can.
Yes, Mr. Region 8, go ahead.
Okay. Tragically, they fell about 2,300 signatures short of the 45,000 necessary. That's my current intelligence on the ground. My current intelligence says that there's also additional litigation pending, and I'll have a better report for that when we get together in just a couple of weeks.
Okay, great. We have a question from Mr. Nepo.
Yes, Mr. Nana, back to Illinois. Would that, obviously I think the deadline you said was July 11th. Would that last $15,000 put them over, get them over the finish line, or I'm unsure how we should proceed on that.
Honestly, I know that we had thought that they might not have received the money, but they very well may have. That is one question I forgot to ask Mr. Redpath when we had our call. I believe if he was concerned, he would have mentioned it to me. He seemed confident that they're going to succeed. It's just that it's going to be a little tighter than what they had originally planned. And usually the goal with these things is to go at least 50% over. So I imagine actually by now they probably are at 115. So they either haven't asked for the money yet because they don't feel they need it, or they've already received it. In my mind, I did not specifically ask Mr. Redpath, and I don't think he's on the call to answer that question, unfortunately.
He is not. I sent him an email actually asking for an update as soon as you started. So once I do get an update, I'll make sure that I share that publicly.
Yeah, and I will also have a much more in-depth report with meetings under our belt, hopefully as the committee at our in-person meeting. I plan on writing a report detailing every state we do and don't have ballot access and how much money and effort it would take to achieve ballot access in those places.
All right. Any more questions on this agenda item before we move to the next item? Going once, Going twice. All right, let's move on. Our next agenda item is deletion of policy manual, section 1.03, subsection 2. That's how it's phrased, but Ms. Harlos, I will let you speak to your agenda item.
Yes, I'm moving to delete. It's newly added last term, section 1.03, subsection 2, which reads as follows: LNC committee appointments. No person appointed by the LNC is a voting member to serve on 3 or more standing, special, or bylaws created committees shall be eligible to be appointed by the LNC to serve as a voting member on any additional standing or special committee. For purposes of determining eligibility, neither the LNC Executive Committee nor any chair advisory committees shall count. This was added last term. I believe it was very, very well intentioned when it was added, but I do think it has some unintended consequences. I can tell you just, from personal experience, I think the LNC members should be able to appoint who they want. I think everybody is their own best judge of time. We are the fiduciaries responsible for this party. And it might just so happen that the person we want to put on a committee who we think is the best qualified might already be on 3 committees. And I don't think we should voluntarily bind ourselves in this way. And I could tell you there are several committees that I think I'm qualified to be on that I would love to be considered for, but I'm kind of hoarding my committee appointments going, oh, well, I've already got these. And I just don't think that's a way for a professional board to act. I think we're all adults. And I think rather than this artificial limitation, we need to be a little bit more proactive in removing people from committees who aren't performing and being adults ourselves when we realize we're not performing, resigning from committees. I think that's the culture, not this. This is kind of nannying. And I don't mean that in an insulting way, because I was present when this was originally put in, and it was put in with the best of intentions. But I make this motion to delete this section.
Okay. I want to ask a clarifying question, then we'll go to Mr. Nana.
Is there a second though, Madam Chair?
Oh, you're very good point. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
That was a contest between Mr. Ford and someone else. Okay, my question is, would deletion of this have any impact on removing someone from a committee?
No.
Okay, so if anybody was unfamiliar, there you go. There's your answer. Let's go to Mr. Nana.
Yeah, in general, personally, I don't think we should overload people. That being said, I don't think it needs to be codified in the policy manual. I think we're all adults here and capable of making decisions on an individualized basis. So I don't think this is something that necessarily needs to be in the policy manual. And I'm a fan of cutting things out of the policy manual. So I'm going to support this.
All right. Anybody else got any comments on this one? I don't see any hands raised, because we're going to go to a vote if no one else has anything. Going once, going twice. All right. Madam Secretary, when you're ready, let's go to a roll call vote.
1 second, let me get to that template. Mr. Benner?
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship?
Abstain.
Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskavich?
Yes.
Mr. Eklund?
Yes.
Ms. Eiler?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's 14 yes, 0 no, 1 express abstention.
Fantastic. Motion passes. Thank you all for moving through that so quickly. Let's go to the next section of that agenda item.
And Madam Chair, this has been withdrawn by Ms. Eiler. I believe you were copied on some email correspondences about this.
Yes. Yes. I'm sorry. I thought there was another part of the policy manual that we were going to cover.
Oh, there is. That was just section 6. I was letting you know. Item 6 has been withdrawn.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so would you like to speak to deleting 5.01?
There was a motion before that to amend something previously adopted.
Oh, you're right. Okay, so that takes care of that. Okay, so let's see, what's next on our agenda that's taken care of?
It would be item number 7, Madam Chair.
Yeah. Let's see here. Motion. Yes, dog, you're correct. Okay, Ms. Harless, take it away.
Can I let my dog in first?
Yes, you can.
Okay, one moment, because he will just get more and more.
Yeah. He probably has a very good point to make.
Is a point of order.
Yes.
Tell you, for a 5-pound dog, he is very bossy. Okay, we previously passed motion. Well, I'm going to make the motion, see if there's a second, and then I'll argue for it. I want to amend something previously adopted. We had previously adopted a motion that would remove the option from the contact form on the website and add in email entire LNC. Upon further reflection, adding the emailing entire LNC, obviously that passed. I'm still all in favor of that. But I think that other option that would only email a person's direct representative should be left. Like the member should have the 3 choices: mail a specific member, their representatives, or the entire LNC. So I would like to strike from the previously passed motion the order to remove the option limiting a contact to only officers at large in the member's own region.
Seconded.
There we go. All right. Let's go ahead and move into discussion. I see Mr. Benner has his hand up.
Yeah, just real quick, I support this. I am totally in favor of having the form changed as we did, although I can see cases where members would both want to email the entire LNC and just confine it to their own reps. This empowers the membership more than it would have been if we don't readdress this, so I support it.
Okay. Oh, I see Mr. Ford has his hand up. Mr. Ford, go right ahead.
Yes, as a veteran, along with Mr. Bowen of the I Survived the LNC Region 8 in 2021, I would support including the direct contact. There is by definition questions that are related strictly to the region. And I'm sure that not everyone needs to hear about questions involving Rhode Island or Connecticut or Massachusetts. So I think it's important just to have a laser-like focus if in fact that's what the member chooses. Thank you.
Got it. Okay, anybody else have any commentary on this item? Feel free.
A quick point of clarification, Madam Chair. I received an email from a member, and as I read it, it was only addressed to me, but it turned out it went to everybody. Is there a way for recipients on the LNC to determine whether they're being directly requested or approached by a member, or whether the email that I'm reading went to everybody? Is there a way to confirm that quickly?
May I answer, Madam Chair?
Absolutely.
If you look at who it's addressed to, if it's just your email address, it's just to you. But if you see distribution lists such as @large@lp.org, officers@lp.org, it means it went to those groups.
Oh, okay, well, I'll double check it. I read it as just to me, but I'll double check that. Thanks for that clarification.
Got it. Okay, any other questions or discussion before we go to a vote? Make sure everybody gets a word in. Okay, going once, going twice. Okay, Madam Secretary, when you're ready, let's go to a vote.
Mr. Benner,
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship,
Yes.
Mr. Bowen,
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskavich,
Yes.
Mr. Eklund,
Yes.
Ms. Eiler,
Yes.
Mr. Elliott.
Yes, are those your fireworks, Madam Secretary?
No, I don't know. At least I didn't hear any. The dogs would be screaming. So. So Mr. Elliott, was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Ford?
Those are my fireworks. I live in the birthplace of the American Revolution, Rhode Island, and I vote yes.
Ms. Gabbard?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nana?
Yes.
Mr. Nikala?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
We are about to light off $5,000 worth of fireworks. I'm not going to be able to hear you guys very soon. Also, yes.
Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Madam Chair, it's 15-0-0.
Okay, that passes. Fantastic. Moving through this so quickly. Okay. Next item on the agenda is deletion of policy manual section 5.01.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, that's the motion. And I'm going to put the policy, that section up on the screen, but I'm waiting to see if there's a second before I speak to it.
All right.
So I'm moving to delete section 5.01.
Okay. Has everybody read it and is familiar with it? And if there's no second, that's okay. But if there is, now is the time. Okay. You guys help me decide what's a reasonable amount of time to keep this up before I say it dies for a lack of second. Should I leave it up for another minute?
I don't know if everyone's read it and they just don't wish to.
Right.
I second it. I'd like to see discussion on it.
Okay, there we go.
Okay, now I'll speak to it. Even if you agree with this policy, it doesn't belong in the policy manual. A lot of it's just procedure on how to moderate posts and how to get my account. You want to talk about policy manual bloat? This is policy manual bloat. This should be an instruction sheet to our social media volunteers. This isn't LNC policy. This is a volunteer guide. However, there are small sections of it that could be considered policy. And those sections were weaponized last term way beyond what they were intended to be. This policy is supposed to be for staff and volunteers, not LNC members. It was weaponized to police LNC members' personal social media, which I think it's inappropriate to police volunteers' personal social media, to be honest with you. But this is really Orwellian, and 98% of it doesn't belong in the policy manual, even if you agreed with it. So if we think we need to have a social media policy in the manual, we need to start from scratch. This, even if it's deleted from the policy manual, it can go into a staff directive or to the communications committee to, it doesn't mean we're disapproving it. We're just removing it from the policy manual. It doesn't belong there. And I would highly suggest that the communications committee, if it is struck from the policy manual in setting its policies for volunteers, gets out of their personal life, because this is just primed for political targeting like it was done last time. And by the way, the Judicial Committee did say one good part of its decision that this didn't apply to LNC members, but the fact is it was used that way. I'm going to tell you, it's my goal this term to remove everything from the policy manual that can be used to weaponize for internal factional games, that nothing in our policy manual should be able to be used in that way.
Okay, let's hear from Mr. Nepo, and then we'll go down the line.
Yes. So when I got access to our social media resources, I immediately asked for what policies there were, and I was directed to this. And having looked through it, I didn't even see how it even applies to most of the actual practices that are used. Yes, some of these things apply very narrowly, but as far as the actual content, as far as actual Most of the behavior that can be undertaken as an administrator, it really doesn't even apply. I'm not even sure what use that this policy as written actually is, besides Ms. Harlos's points. So I'm absolutely in favor of deleting this wholly.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to Mr. Nana.
Yeah, I think I can live with this being in the policy manual, but I think Ms. Harlos brings up a good point that this is probably not the place for it. There's plenty of other places we could define what the social media team is and isn't allowed to post. And I think that maybe if we do want something in the policy manual that, as she said, it should probably be rewritten. Obviously not something we're going to do tonight, but maybe over the coming weeks.
Got it. Okay, let's go to Ms. Eiler and then let's pop up to Mr. Harris.
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. I just wanted to ask if deleting this would make any change to the freedoms we enjoy to be agile with our messaging.
I think it would give us, this has nothing to do with messaging. It's all very mechanical. The only thing that has to do with messaging is what people say on their personal pages, which is so subjective. The rest of it is just really, really mechanical. How do I get my account? How do I moderate posts? It's like, why don't we put, how do you sign up for Facebook if we're going to get like this in the policy manual? It makes no sense.
Thank you. Let's go to Mr. Harris.
Thank you. And in indulgence for the fireworks here, there may be a debate raging in the chat about where the revolution began, but it certainly ended here in Virginia. So we are celebrating here tonight as well. Some information that the committee may find helpful in discussing this item. Over the past couple of years with social media residing primarily with staff and volunteers being managed with staff, we had to deal with this policy on the ground, heads on, and found it almost immediately necessary to adopt further instruction on social media implementation down to our volunteer level. I think Ms. Harlow summed it up pretty well, that this policy doesn't really cover the sort of things you would look for in a corporate social media policy, direction for those actually crafting posts on what our brand identity is, how we should be messaging. These are the sort of things that aren't there. So I think whatever form it takes, whether this committee decides that it needs to reside within the policy manual or simply be handed, and of course, social media is no longer being directly managed by staff, but to those engaging in social media activity, however that direction is adopted, it makes sense to replace it with something. But I certainly think that it's a worthwhile thing to think about replacing the policy that's existing in the manual now.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Okay, I'm trying to figure out who has and hasn't spoken on this so far. I think Dustin hasn't spoken yet, so I'm going to jump ahead to him and then go back to Dave Benner and then to Donovan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to kind of echo what Tyler said, which is that we need something in place. I think we do need a social media policy. I just think this probably isn't the right one, or at least as written is not in the right location. The only thing that I would question is whether we should leave this in place until we've drafted an alternative, as opposed to wiping it and having no social media policy in the meantime. That's just a question that I would pose to the group.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's jump to Mr. Benner now.
Yeah, Madam Chair, if you think it's in order, I would just like to ask Karen Ann directly. Karen Ann, you had mentioned that the previous judicial committee had ruled that this doesn't apply to LNC and only staffers. So I'm just curious, do you think that there's any textual support in that, or is it just structural that it doesn't make sense that it applies to LNC?
Everything. I mean, it's both structural and textual. It mentions LNC and then it mentions the people it applies to, and there'd be no reason to mention them separately if they were the same. But again, past judicial committee decisions aren't binding on future LNCs. And I think once we see things that are being weaponized, we need to neutralize that. And I want to be clear, this isn't just about last term. Prior to social media in 2008, Angela Keaton was attempted to be removed for what she said on her blog, which would have been the social media of 2008. That's just the nature of politics. And I think we need to remove that temptation to do that against people we don't agree with politically. And the funny thing is, I'm in the majority on this board. It would be a power I would have. I don't want that power.
Okay, thank you very much. Next person is, I think, Mr. Pankey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would primarily like to ask Mr. Harris, because I do have some legitimate concerns here that that we don't have a particular time, or we don't know or could postpone the adoption of a new policy that will be applicable to the parties that we would like it to be applicable to in the way that we want it done, to actually do it correctly. And so I would like to ask Mr. Harris is that if we went for 3, maybe 6 months without any direction in place on the policy, on the party's official documents, that helps to act as a governor for what happens on social media by staff or other members that would contribute to that. Does that, would, in your opinion, would that leave us in an exposed state for that period?
I'm not sure that I'm actually the appropriate individual to address that to anymore in terms of official party social media. That's now in the hands of the social media committee. So Angela, maybe you'd want to weigh in, or perhaps recognize some of that from that committee to weigh in on the extent to which they feel a governing document is something that's going to hamper their efforts. Certainly we felt the need, as I said, to issue corollary documents on staff to provide more internal guidance than this policy had. Those have already been circulated to staff. So I don't see a reason why removing this from the policy manual would in any way nullify any of that instruction should our official social media rotate back to staff.
So at some point over the course of the next 2 months, there's going to be some additional guidelines on social media put together by the people who are currently running it. And it's not going to be, how long is this?
It's like 7 pages.
Okay, so it'll probably be more like 1 or 2 paragraphs. But right now we are kind of in trial and error mode. And I think it's important for us to work on that based on not just like conjecture and like what our idea of good social media is, but kind of experimenting and seeing like this worked, this didn't, you know what, this really offended a lot of people. This was kind of a disaster. So we're going to put together some general guidelines, but it's not going to be this long.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's hop to Mr. Ford and Hagopian, and then let's come back to Ms. Harlows.
Out of respect for Karen Ann Harlows, I was about to call the question, but I'd love to have her get her last words in. I rise in support of this. We've got a policy manual that is out of control, and if I could invoke the words of a great Rhode Island libertarian, Beth Richardson, for a bunch of anarchists, we sure have a whole lot of that goddamn rules. So I would like to just start to step back and purge the policy manual of some of the well-intentioned, might I add, bloviating that's gone on. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. Okay, let's hear from Mr. Hagopian.
Yeah, I believe what I heard from the executive director is that the staff are already governed by a different document. So I'm comfortable deleting this. My only question would be, if we delete it, should the social media team be governed by the same document as the staff until such time as we pass the new social media policy that you're talking about, Angela?
They currently are. It's
Perfect.
already, yeah.
Then I rise in support. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Harlows?
Okay, yeah, I'll be quick. As Mr. Harris had said, staff is already covered by orders of the executive director that they can put out without it being in the policy manual. This has only been in the policy manual about a year. I used to be one of the sole posters on the Facebook page, and we The world didn't end when we didn't have something in the policy manual. This is the province of the social media committee. It was well-intentioned when it was written. I do want to say that, but the fact is this doesn't leave us exposed because it doesn't even cover, as Mr. Harris said, the things that need to be covered. And I said 7 pages. Actually, you can see it's pages 74 through 91. It's 16 pages. And maybe 2 paragraphs out of it could be salvaged by the social media committee, but that needs to be their decision. And that's all I have to say.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Harlos. I think that takes care of, oh wait, Mr. Elliott's got something. And then after that, we'll probably go to a vote because I bet we're almost out of time.
Yeah, I just would like to let everyone in the committee know that there is an effort underway to do a comprehensive rework of the policy manual. Kathy Yanuskevich has agreed, and I think all that's left is to create a process. And I think we've just been waiting for getting all the gatekeeping and new people stuff sorted out before we begin that effort. But we're going to begin that effort shortly, and we will clean up a lot of the policy manual problems that we all can see just doing a quick read through. So I just wanted to make that clear to everybody on the committee.
So on that note, I'll be circulating a strategy document. I was hoping to get it out before the meeting, but I'll probably have to get it out later this evening. Part of it's going to be confidential, part of it's not going to be, so that the rest of it that's non-confidential can go to the membership and the public. And that's going to help guide policy manual revisions. And I've also invited Ms. Hartlos to participate in that, but that is going to be related to the item at hand.
Yeah, and if the body would indulge me when it comes to the policy manual revisions, I would like to be very intimately involved, even if just for the fact that I am a registered parliamentarian. And there's a lot of Ms. Mattson put in so much great time in her cross-reference footnotes there that say how it interplays with Roberts. And I'd like to make sure we keep that up and accurate.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's go to a vote on this item. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Harlos, I will let you take it away.
Mr. Benner?
Just to remove any kind of conflict of interest, I'd like to defer my vote to Mr. Cowan, because I'm on the communications committee.
Mr. Cowan?
Yes.
And let me just, because I will not remember that one. Let me just mark that. Mr. Blankenship?
Pass.
1 second. And why isn't it? Doesn't matter. I just get so anal about that. Mr. Bowen?
Yes.
Ms. Yanuskevich?
Yes.
Mr. Eklund?
Yes.
Ms. Eiler?
Yes.
Mr. Elliott?
Yes.
Mr. Ford?
Yes.
Ms. Gabbard?
Yes.
Mr. Hagopian?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Mr. Nano?
Yes.
Mr. Nikela?
Yes.
Mr. Smith? I think he dropped off. Mr. Watkins?
Yes.
Mr. Blankenship?
Yes.
Madam Chair, 1300.
All right, the motion passes. Now, thank you guys for taking care of that. The next item on the agenda is not visible on the agenda, but it is public comment. We have about 16 minutes of it left. Do we have any public comment? Going once, we've had, oh, Mr. Molman. I know there's been a lot going on in the chat, which I appreciate. So and Mr. Hinkle, so if we've got some people lining up. If we've got someone to help Mr. Harris keep track of time, we're going to defer to him to start unmuting and addressing people. And I will say, Mr. Molman, as soon as you're unmuted, go for it.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you all for the meeting. It was good to hear stuff getting done. The one thing I wanted to emphasize is if you're going to do the NDA stuff, to please consider harmonizing it and try to create one document if you can. It may not be possible, but there was a lot of confusion on that I thought you all were talking, that people were talking about the CRM NDA. I'm like, please don't change it. But it turned out that was not what was being talked about.
All right, thank you. Go ahead.
Oh, sorry, my car took over, sorry. And then the other thing I was going to note was, again, a reminder for the 40-something people that hung out here, who are not all just LNC members. If you are this interested in the party to hang out and watch this meeting, I hope you're interested enough to help contribute financially. And you can go to donate.lp.org and donate with Bitcoin, or you can go to lp.org/donate and donate with Federal Reserve notes. That's all. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mr. Molman. Okay, next up we have Mark Hinkle.
And I guess I need to unmute. Just wanted to say, well-run meeting. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, especially coming from former chair. Up next, let's actually jump to Jonathan Jacobs, and then we'll circle back to Mr. Nepo because JJ is not on the LNC.
Madam Chairman, I just wanted to say, you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to say that I thought this was an exceptionally well-run meeting with substantive debate, and I really enjoyed it. This is coming from an outsider.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Let's go to Mr. Nepo.
Yes, I just wanted to comment to everyone and everyone who's watching that I've actually been amazed at how little membership, or excuse me, messages from the membership I've gotten in the short time I'm on the board. I was frankly prepared to get a lot more. So I just wanted to remind everybody here, we are a membership organization. And for all of us to do better, or to do the best we can as leaders and activists in this organization, I think we need to be absolutely dependent on feedback from the membership. We need to be, we need to hear what people actually care about and what their beliefs and perceptions are about the work we are doing. So I would just encourage everybody to just feedback to the members of the board, any criticisms or praise, what have you. It's important to us. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nepo. We're going to go to Richard Brown, and then we're going to go to Mimi Robeson. Mr. Brown, whenever you're unmuted, feel free to speak.
Now I'm unmuted. Thank you. I just wanted to say, as the convention parliamentarian of the Libertarian Party for the past 6 years or so, this was a very good meeting. And Madam Chairman, I think you did an outstanding job of presiding. Congratulations. Job well done. Meeting was well run. Smooth meeting, good meeting. It was a very good meeting.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, let's jump to Ms. Mimi Robeson, California Chair.
Well, I just want to echo what a couple other people have said. I think that this meeting was really well run. I think there was really some substantive debate. I think you got a lot done. You got it done very efficiently. And I just wanted to congratulate especially you, Madam Chair, and the rest of the LNC for having a really good meeting. So thank you.
Thank you. And is there anything important in California coming up that you would like to share during public comment? Going once, going twice. Okay, well, I tried. Let's go on to
what happened is I had already turned off and I had to be waited to be unmuted again. So I apologize. So yeah, I would love to talk about a few things coming up in California, especially one of them. We have a money bomb right now, and that is for the state fair, which is a huge opportunity for the state party. And we're trying to raise money to be able to have a much more impactful presence at the state fair. So if anybody would like to donate to that, you can go to either our Facebook page or just donate at ca.lp.org/donate. And if anything comes in the next few minutes, I will know it's for this. I think really that's the only big thing right now. Although anybody that's interested, we're having a meeting on July 7th, if you'd like to join us for that. And what else did you have in mind, Madam Secretary, or I'm sorry, Madam Chair? Was there anything I'm forgetting?
Madam Chair to Madam Chair, I think that about covers it.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, next up, we've got Mr. Ford and then Miss Eiler.
Well, as you all know by now, Rhode Island, in fact, is the center of the universe. We've got an outstanding individual known to all running for governor here in the state of Rhode Island. And that, of course, is the famous Elijah Ghisarelli. He declared, filed his papers. This is a ballot access race. And if you will, the measure of the man, Elijah, in a statist Soviet workers' paradise like Rhode Island will be astonishing. So lpri.us is, of course, the website for the Great Libertarian Party of Rhode Island. Remember, the only party that fired Bill Weld, sorry. If you have a few dollars, if you've ever met Elijah, you know he is the man to bring the message to, again, a state like Rhode Island. So please, if you can support him, we get 5% of the vote. We'll get ballot access in the state of Rhode Island for the very first time. So we'd appreciate all your support, particularly for Elijah. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I believe, looks like last up we have Ms. Harless.
Oh, sorry, and I was taking notes. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just some updates for everyone. I've been working on the convention minutes. The first draft of a complete set of minutes should be out by Wednesday. One reason I'm such in a hurry to do them is they do need to be up for public comment for a certain minimum amount of time before approved, and I'd like to get them approved at our July in-person meeting. Also, I want to invite LNC members primarily, but members also secondarily. If there's any changes or additional things that you would like to see in the documentation I prepare for meetings, such as the OneNote, so on and so forth, please let me know. I do think it's my job to ensure smooth running of the meetings and easy way for members to follow along and interface. Lastly, one thing that's not officially like part of my role, but that I do is I update the website for administrative stuff. So those minutes that were all approved tonight will be up by tomorrow. I do committee updates. So if any member or LNC member sees something that's on that administrative LNC thing that needs to be changed or an error, you don't need to bother staff. My goal has always been to take as much off of staff as I can, let them concentrate on things that only staff can do rather than secretarial stuff. Just let me know right away if there's a misspelling or something like that in committee assignments, that sort of thing, and I'll take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have Mr. Bowen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to end the evening by saying thank you to everyone on the board for instituting and joining the monthly meeting. Many of you know it was something we tried to do on the last term, but was not met with a lot of success. Meetings kept getting canceled, postponed, and I was very disappointed in that aspect of the last term. As you all know, I'm disappointed in a lot of aspects of the last term. This happened to be one of them. Let's keep it up. Let's keep doing it. It does help get business done. It makes the quarterly in-person meetings much more manageable. This was something from the beginning when I was on the board that I thought we should be doing all the time as a matter of policy, and glad to see it reinstituted. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Bowen. I will say that I do intend to keep monthly meetings. If we get to a point in the future where things are operating so smoothly that we just have to, we're hands off and the car is driving itself, that'll be great. But until then, we need to keep business going. Thank you everyone for joining this meeting. We're coming to the end. Looks like public comment is about done. We are going to continue to fundraise through the end of July and continue our Bitcoin discussion, and also transition into talking very aggressively about inflation and getting some different industry perspectives on that, especially small businesses. And we'll also be doing a big awareness campaign on Second Amendment rights, and we'll continue to support having a peaceful resolution to the war in Yemen. to the extent that it is appropriate for the American empire to be weighing in on that, which really means we need to be pulling out. There is just one item left on our agenda. And it is.
Move to adjourn.
There we go. All right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Any objections or discussion? Don't do it. Don't do it. No? Going once, going twice. Thank you guys so much. We are adjourned at exactly 10 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. We kept it right on the 2-hour mark. Yeah, that's incredible. Okay, thank you guys so much. We'll be seeing you at a meeting at the end of the month in DC, and I'm sure I'll see most of you on the internet.